Hello and welcome to the first edition of KJ's Conundrums. I'm your host, KJ. Here to, I guess the main precipice of this portion of my YouTube channel is instead of it being the crash course that I'm sure probably has brought you here, taking that a step further. So when you take the crash course, that teaches you, hey, look, great, fantastic, you know the software now, go use it and apply it. That's exactly what this portion is designed to do, where I'm presented an example from either someone in my LinkedIn community, friends, family, whatever, and I try to use UiPath to help them solve their problem that they see fit. This first one comes to me from my buddy, good buddy Mike Downs. We actually sang an a cappella in college together. He's one of my best friends in the world, and he's super, super great. And he came to me, and he is doing some work for a not-for-profit, where what they are trying to do is grab the parks and director for a list of cities. He actually provided the city and state to search here. So for all of these individual cities, can we get the parks and director name, right? And potentially email as well. So we sat down and we said, okay, is there a database to search? Well, if you search, Parks and Rec director, right? And I'll just put that first one. We were doing Tucson, Arizona as the example, right? Sometimes you see something that looks like this. If we change this to, I think we said Charlotte, North Carolina, right? You see, okay, sometimes we get this easy result. Now you might say, oh, this would be really easy. And this one actually directed to LinkedIn, which is awesome. But we said, what if we bubble that up and say, okay, we can try to perform that search. That's fine. But is that standardized? Is it not? I don't know. So what can we do? So we decided, well, what if we use LinkedIn? Because we know everyone usually has a LinkedIn profile. Usually it's going to be if we search W. Lee Jones, right, and we go to here, we can see, oh, cool, Director of Mecklenburg County. We can see right there, Charlotte, North Carolina, Director there, and we get the idea of the Parks and Recreation Department. So we'd want to say, well, maybe LinkedIn is the way to go because there's no standardized website or so on and so forth, and all of the websites are different, right? If you're here, chances are you probably understand RPA does require a little bit of some sort of standardized format, and we plug in AI later. This is that exact example. So is it possible that we could search, right, Parks and Recreation Director, right? We perform that search and we say, okay, great, go to people specifically, and then we say, oh, there's about 62,000 results. That'd be great. What we had decided was, what if we just scrape this, get the name, the title, where he's located, or he or she is located, and then just scroop through and do it. Here's the problem that we ran into, and this is where the conundrum came in here, was there's 62,000 results in terms of people. LinkedIn will only show you 100 at a time. So if we do the math, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 records here. And if we do 10 times 100, that's only 1,000. So we wanted to originally, scrape the results here, get them all, and then retroactively go. But what we found is we're not going to get all the results that way. So then, all right, well, let's take this a step further. So if we do Parks and Recreation Director, and then let's add some filters. So we've obviously done a little bit of work before this video, but we're still going to build this in real time so you can see how this works. So right here is we're going to go, right, title. So we're going to put Director specifically. So we click Show Results, and we can see that that limits our search a little bit, which is good. And then I think the next thing we want to do is, can we add a location? So if we do Tucson, Arizona, United States, and show results, right, we get a little bit more of the result that we're looking for, okay? So then we're like, all right, how do we get this down? We see 35 links. So then I thought, well, what if we just build an automation to loop through for each city and state, perform your search, give you the results, and then give you a full output with name, the URL of the profile, and so on and so forth, right? So you can get all the information and then triage it that way. We decided that was the way to go. So all of that explanation to say, I'm going to show you how I would build this thing out from scratch, right? I think that's super important to not only just see the finalized output, but more, how did people get there? And how do you use this tool to help you problem solve? That's really the whole point of the conundrum part, is just because I might be using it to solve the purpose, is this the best way to find the Parks and Rec directors? Maybe. It's one way that we deemed fit. Maybe it doesn't work, and maybe we have a follow-up and we say, oh, let's try something else, and so on and so forth. But the only way to get there is to try. And really the only way to truly get there is to build it and then figure that out later. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. So that's what we did. That's what we figured out. So let me reset this. We know this search is going to be, right? We know searching by title with director is going to be important. Okay, so we know here, we know we want some part of these 24,000 results. And then what we need to do is add a location. All right, so I think the other way to do that, or let's go back to this. So I already have a workflow already built here. All right. So first thing I think we need to do from the automation perspective is let's just focus on doing the scrape part first. So let's try to nail this down. So we were actually doing this for Austin because we were trying to figure this out. And if you remember, I think we did this in exercise 5, right? If we do all of this and we look at the URL specifically, if we do Parks and Rec Director Austin, right, we see 454 results. We can see Parks and Recreation, Director, and then we see this origin right here, right, where we can see the actual URL. I don't like that one specifically. Let me search this and try this again. All right, there we go. Let's just go back to home. All right, let's do this. We'll go people. So I should delete this out and try this again. All right, clear. Yep, clear history. We'll go to people. Oh, sorry. See, this is exactly why. This is great. So then right here, let's go to people. On this page, get to the people search specifically, and let's just delete this and get this clean. Great, awesome. So then we can do this specifically, Parks and Rec Director Austin, and we can see that's what we're looking for. That's a little bit better. And if we add the filter for director, that's the URL I think we're looking for, right? So I did all of that. We aren't even doing the automation piece, but it's helping me get my results cleaner and faster to get us directly to that page. If you remember, I think it was exercise 5 in KJ's crash course. If you haven't gone to it, it's like the advanced exercises, right? What it does, you can go directly to a URL. If you can go directly to a URL instead of clicking around, it saves you clicks, time, and effort, and then we can use like variables inside of this to do it. So we can see in Austin, because when we searched Austin, Texas, because we actually know, I believe the current director from what we say is Kimberly McNeely. The issue was it shows up as assistant director. She would need to update her profile. So if we type in Austin, Texas, for example, and make this a little bit deeper, the person we need doesn't actually show up. So we had to actually figure out, oh, we need to take that away to get that 176 results and go from there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to use this to change our URLs here to perform a specific search, perform the scrape, and then go from there. We're going to test this out here in a bit. So how I'm going to do that is we're going to start with the hard part. We're going to start with the scrape of this. This has also been a little frustrating as well, right? So if we were going to do this, we would do table extraction, add new column. I'm just going to do a couple results here so you can see it. We'll do text. We can see we can identify the pattern, click confirm, and then you'd say, oh, okay. Right after that, yep, LinkedIn member, that doesn't pop up, that's fine. And then we'd say, oh, we want to extract data from multiple pages. We identify the next button, right? And we would do this, click save and close. Right, we're done with this. Why is this not working? Save and close, perfect. Right, and then we get this scrape here, and then you expect it to extract a data table and then give us some results. All right, so let's just test this real quick so we can see what happens. But what we understood earlier, and if this does work, it'd be hilarious. We'll do output, right? Test.xlsx, sheet name, we'll call it sheet 1, right? We're going to write this to A1, and then data table is extract data table there. When we ran this before, it wouldn't actually find, it would find the next button, but then it wouldn't work again. So we should only get those first 9 or 10 records here. So if we just hit run file just to test it, Oh, excuse me. I'm working through a cold here. All right, started debugging, clicks next, then we get to here. And now we see, for whatever reason, this doesn't work. And the scrape doesn't work in this. It's getting hung up right now. It'll error out in a little bit. We ran through this before, so I'm going to show you how I would back end this as well to still build this thing out. Right, so even if we page down, yeah, so if we page down, we get it to work, right? So if I do this, next, it'll keep working. The issue is if we keep doing that, right, and I'll let this error out here, we can't build that into that specific table extraction activity. So just like you saw in, I think it was exercise 5, you know, we could do the table scraping, it would hit pagination, it was fine. If the element itself isn't loaded or it's not visible, this doesn't work. The automation assumes it's not there. So what we have to actually understand is how this works so we can reverse engineer it and go backwards. And that's what we're going to work on here, which is why it's a conundrum. So if we saw I had to manually intervene to send the page down so I could do something with it. Okay. The issue was it didn't really give me the results we needed. It wasn't great. Things didn't load. It was a mess, right? There's a lot of things here that didn't necessarily work. So why, right? So while we have this activity and it works really well, we can use it and use things around this specific extract table data activity to make our life easier. And that's what I'm going to show you in this conundrum, which is awesome. So you can see that didn't really work. So how do we do this instead? Well, best thing we can do is let's focus on right here. Let's get back to page 1. All right, we have the search that we need. So let's go back and we'll do the use application / browser. Okay. And then what we're going to do is, right, obviously spy this, right? We know the URL is here. We're going to change that URL with a variable later on, but we're just going to start with this to make sure we can get the scrape to work. Okay. So here's our URL, and we're going to eventually change this right here to be a variable for the city later. Okay, just highlighting that because it's important later on. All right, so we do that, resize window, maximize. Okay, here we go. So then we do that, and then what I want to always do is I just want to see, do we get an element exist or check app state rather, right? I'm used to element exist with the classic activities, but check app state, and we're going to say element to appear, right? Maybe not even element to appear, because then if we do this and we say, okay, right? Right, I just want to check something real quick. Click confirm, and we say element to appear. We'll just make this, we'll do 5 seconds. If the target appears, give me a message box that says it's there. And then if it does not appear, it's not there. Okay, so now we're just going to run this real quick, pull this up, and just see what we get running this activity. So we see right here, it's there. So it's showing that the value is there. So, okay, so we did that on the first page. Let's try this on right here. Let's go to this and let's try it on another page and see if it's there. So we see it's not there. So when a new page loaded, we know it's there, right? Because if I scroll down and run this again, it'll say it's there. So this is the importance of understanding like how brittle websites are and how they can be and how do you work around that, right? Like that's the whole, you know, I know I've said this, you know, a few times now, but that's the whole point of this conundrum is doing it sounds simple on paper, but then sometimes when you deal with finicky applications, how do you get ahead of that? So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we can see this does work. So we know if we scroll down and this element is visible, it'll work. Okay. So what we need to do here is we need to actually, right? I'm just looking at all this real quick. All right, so we know all that. We got this. Great, cool. So we don't need to do that app state now. But what we're going to need to do, right, is with every step, we know we're going to perform a search and we know we're going to get some results. So no matter what I'm going to do is we are going to perform that table extraction there. But what we really need to do is perform a do while, right? So do while, and then we're going to have that it's going to be like a Boolean variable, right? So is it check app state? Does it give you a variable on the outside? I don't even know. Does it give you that? Result. It does give you a true or false. Awesome. Cool. So while, and I'm going to create a true false here. So while, I'm going to call it Boolean next button exists, right? As long as Boolean, hold up. Is this only available in, oh, there you go. Well, I'm going to use all that later. Next button exists in the main sequence. So while Boolean, right, next button exists equals true. So while the button is always there, okay? So first thing we're going to do, no matter what, is do while. We know that this is true, and we're going to set it to being true, because on our first result, it should always be there, okay? Right, we are, no matter what, going to need to send pages down, okay? So what we're going to do is do a type into, and then I just want to click on something to make the page active. So if you remember in that same exercise, we use the type into trick to page down and do some certain things to like hotkey and so on and so forth. Same concept applies here. So I'm going to look for something that shows the results up here. Click confirm. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send some page downs. And I'm going to send it like 10 times. I'm just going to copy and paste this. But we're going to do that. Right? And then do 9, 10. Cool. Right? And then after we do that, we don't need to empty the field because we're actually clicking on something and then sending the page down. So we have that. Then we're going to check the app state to look for, because we've sent the page down, look for this. Right? Click confirm. If it exists, right? If it doesn't exist, we're not going to do anything anymore, because it's, if we go to 18, this should be grayed out, this shouldn't work, and we'll be done, right? So if it doesn't exist, we're good, right? If it does exist, we don't need to do anything. If it does exist, what do? Well, we know now we need to scrape all the values. So let's work on that. So we'll grab the name here, we'll grab the text, and we'll go name, confirm. Then we'll do the here again, or actually, let me, nope. Delete that out, and then let's do the URL, extract URL, and then we'll go LinkedIn profile URL. Right, great, add new column. We want to grab the title. Right, confirm. And then the last thing we want is location, right? Location of that there. Click confirm. And then we don't want to do the extract data from multiple pages, because this is going to complete the loop for us. And then since we know it's going to page down every time, scrape the results, then it's going to click. Okay, so we'll just click that, do save and close, right? We know it's multiple rows configured. It saves to extract data table, no limit, right? Then what we're going to do after that is we're going to click, and then I'm going to do some data table stuff here in a minute, okay? But we know we'll do this. Right, we want to click this specific button, click confirm, and then there we go. So we know this should work. So with these results, let's just give this a test. I'm not going to write anything yet. But let's just see, let's make sure that it does all this, clicks all the results, and then while it's true, and let's make sure it'll actually click a few pages here, and I'll stop it as it runs. So here we go. So if we perform that search, this is what it'll look like. I'm just scrolling up real quick. It'll look like this when we perform that search. Tabs down, performs our scrape, there's next. Does that, performs our scrape, clicks next. So I walked you through all of that. I know it was a little arduous, but if you know how the extract data table activity works, you can always reverse engineer it, which is super, super awesome. And then right here, same thing, looking for the results, and we can just keep running this over and over. So we know that that works, which is great. Awesome. So now let's get some results here, all right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we know, type into here, check app state, extract data table. Now, how do we get the results, all right? So what we're gonna do is, first thing we need to do is we have to extract data table, and then we have to write this to another data table. So let's use the build data table activity. All right. And then let's just rename some stuff just for cleanliness. Name, max length, -1 means it can be as long as you want. Here we'll go LinkedIn, profile, URL. This doesn't have to match what you put in the data table activity, because normally that's saying, oh, we're just going to write this for you, but you get the idea. Then we say title and then location. Awesome. Cool. So we hit OK. We have that data table. We're going to call this, I recreated one before, scrape output, right? And then you'll see right here, we pull all of these values. And then what we want to do is we're going to just do a for each. Remember the for eaches scenario that we walked through exercise 4 and 5, right? For each row in a data table. I'm going to just change this to what I like, the old school. I'm going to go row, for each row in, extract data table, and then I want to add that data row to my existing data table to get us a result for all 18 records there. Okay, so we do add data row, and then we're going to do row, right? Because you want to define what you put here, right? We want the item specifically. I want the first column, right? Convert it to a string, and then I'm just going to do that for all the rows of data. Okay, so there's that. There's 1. There's 2. And then here's 3. Oh, and there's 3. What am I writing this to? Well, it's the data table we created. Okay, right? And then once we have all of that for each row in a data table, we get all the results. It'll keep doing this until it says true. And then we should be able to, after this do while activity, right? We should too, once we're done with this, we should be able to write that data out. And then we'll just keep repeating this over and over again once we get to the city part, but I just want to see what our output looks like. So I know we have this in the project. Oh, it's in use. So we're going to call this scrape outputs. Let me just copy and paste that because we're going to need it. Right, close that down. Scrape output, sheet name is scrape outputs. We're going to write this into cell A1. The data table is going to be the data table we're writing to, add headers. And let's give this a try from the first go round, and let's see if we get all 176 results inside of our Excel file. So let's hang tight. Oh, okay. So this is the importance of running things in debug mode and not doing it like I did, like a moron. So because we wrote in the do while, right, we're going to always click that top result, check app state, and then click the next button, right? The issue is going to become, right, it may not be able to click that specific button because as we just saw, it's disabled, right? The target element's disabled, we can't do it. So how do we do that, right? So I think what we actually need to do is let's flip this real quick. So once we get our results, right, extract data table, right? And then what I'm going to do is, remember how we did that little bit of error handling in exercise 5 about the if you're already logged in? We're going to try and click this next button, right? If it doesn't work, just throw an exception and we're done, right? Because we're already going to have the data in the row. If it errors out, just bubble up. Next one's going to try and do this. Does this exist true? It should be out and it should write and we should be good. So let's retry this now, knowing what we know now. And let's try to see if we can get this to work. And I'm going to run this in debug mode because that was really stupid of me and I should have done it the first time. So here we go. So it looks like I am right here. It looks like it is still looping through. Maybe what we do is we know the next button is there. So let me actually look at the target. Oh, it can find it. Oh, interesting. So maybe we need to do the check app state at the end instead of here. And then, right, we're looking to see. All right, so let's work through this, right? This is what I'm showing you. I'm showing you everything in real time, not trying to show you the clean. Sometimes we get it wrong and we try to think, how do we think through this? So maybe this all doesn't need to be in the check app state. Maybe I pull all this out because we know we're going to do that step every page, every time anyway. We'll keep it in the do while. Oh, we need that. And then we'll do that. Extract data table for each row. In a data table. Next. And then, right, it says default to true. No, hold on. What do I want to do here? Do we want the element to appear? Or do we want... Well, I guess... we really want to try and indicate... Right, this. Which I think if we look at it, disabled. Okay, so we're really looking for the disabled one. Right, if that appears, break the loop. Right, else don't do anything because we know we want to click that next button and it'll, right, because I think it would be this, right? Because if we follow the logic here, we're saying every time, no matter what, go to the results, click this, page down, extract the data, add the data to your data set. If this is grayed out, break the loop, right? This will exit the loop, do while, etc. If the target does not appear, right, click the next button. I think that's right. So let's try this again. Third time is the charm. Oh, it did find. Okay, so we have to find something different here on the disabled because it says this appeared. If it appears, break the loop. So this is saying that this specific selector. Okay, so maybe we need to get a little creative on our target. Okay. So we do here, we're doing fuzzy selector, type button class, this disabled, right? And then if we do this one, target, check inner text next. Maybe we have to go a little deeper and say, I don't need to do verify execution. What would we do here? Because I want it to be grayed out. Maybe we just use strict selectors here instead of fuzzy, because I know that would work. So we're looking for, we know it's going to be there. So let's do indicate target on screen. Right now, we have to do this the opposite way. We have to go to page 18. Go to here. We want this to be there. So we know indicate target. I want it to be this. Right, there we go. I can leave the click, right? So with this, excuse me. So if we do this and we go to strict selector, let's open the UI Explorer here and figure it out. So we can see the button, we see the ID tag, but I want it to be, instead of visible inner text, can I get creative with this? Where I just want it to be disabled? Alright. So now let's try this one. Okay. That's helpful. That's helpful. So what I did, in case you're unaware, is you can wildcard inside of selectors as well. I would welcome you to go to UiPath Foundations and learn a little bit more about selectors there, to look for if it says disabled. Because if it is disabled, and we know it's there, if not, just click next, because we know that that works. Let's see if that fixes our problem. Here we go. So let's do that. And let's debug one more time. And I'm just clicking into it so that way we can see what's happening in real time. What happened here? I'm going to say default. I'm going to go 3 seconds, but this is saying if the target appears, element 2 appear. Oh. Well, I can make a strict selector, but if I don't change the targeting method, it's not going to matter. So let's do that. Okay. All right, one more time. Here we go. There we go. Wait, what happened? Ah, I know what I did with the logic. Okay. We're going to start with this on false. And instead of calling it next button, let's call it next, or we'll call it disabled next button exists, just for easy. I could have left the same variable, but now we know as long as this equals false, right? Because if this is now true, I guess you don't even need the break. I guess the break just is an extra catch. Huh, interesting the way I'm thinking about it, but that should work now, right? Because if it does exist, because we're actually looking to see if the disabled button's there. If it's not disabled, we just keep moving on, right? Because that's how it worked the first time. Okay, so that should give us all the results. A little wonky, but even then, like I said, it's the importance of understanding how the data scraping and the data table extraction activity works, so in that way you can recreate it in scenarios like this. Yep, 1, 2, 3. Click. Send it down. Cool. And now we'll let this keep going until we get to the next part. I think we're good, right? So we're here, we're done. Let's go to the project and check our scrape output. Here we go. Do we get 176 records? Wow, that did not work out the way that I thought it would. That is frustrating. Okay. Why did that not work? Well, now let's try and see what we're doing here. So Let's see what happened here. Huh. Interesting. That works. It doesn't work on page 2, huh? Let's try this again. Can we retry? Okay, let's just try doing this again. Name. Let's grab the URL. Oh. Title. And then location. Alright, so we know we can do that on 2. Let's try it on 5. Don't edit the data. Yep, name, URL, title, location. Yep, continue. And now let's go back to page 1. Does it work here now? Interesting. What is it about page 1 that doesn't work on page 2 and beyond? Let me try something here. So if we go back to page 2, right? Once again, finicky applications, right? They can be frustrating and annoying. So if we go try Data Wizard, let's try. Just trying to add more to it, see if that helps. Name, I just want to try name, just try 1, just see if I can get this to work. So we just go to test extraction, no data can be extracted. Interesting. Does page 1 need its own scrape? I guess, right? It's not working on that other one. Okay. If that's the case, what would we do? Well, I guess we could do a counter variable. No, like for page 1. That would be because do while is going to be a loop, so we have a counter variable in there from when we did this before. I guess what you could do is start the first one, assign integer plus 1 to add something to that variable. We'll reset this at the end. And then we know this one, we have to redo this, so let's edit extract data. We'll start with the first one. All right, we'll delete that. Do this one more time. Grab the URL. Title. And then grab this. We'll call that location. All right, save and close. This will be the first. Right, this will be the first one. So I think it's just going to be if int counter equals 1, meaning it's the first page. All right, we'll start this at 0. else we'll do it on the other page. That's interesting. It's very, very interesting to me. Oh well, I mean, so be it. We know that this works on all the other ones, so we're good there. So we'll add extract data, and then delete them all and just redo it again. Right? This text, and then name. So obviously that was super long-winded, and sorry for the runaround there, y'all, but this is what happens in the real world out there. This is what happens when you think things are going to work properly and you think that, you know, you're going to be able to figure it out just because you understand it theoretically and it would work. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of, you know, why, of course, but sometimes it's really frustrating getting things to work, and I don't want you to go into things and think it's just going to work immediately right out of the gate. And I think this is a clear indication, right? We saw past 20 minutes or so of me working through this, getting it to work, not getting any data, so on and so forth, right? Just to get to this point, right? Just to eventually need an if on a counter to see if we're on that first page, which is kind of wild to think about. But it is important. It's important to know how applications work and what's on the back end and what's different. So let's just test this on page 9. Let's just make sure that this is working properly, right? Test extraction. We do get the results there, right? We get the results. Let's go to page 11, right? Let's make sure we test our extraction. We know that that works. If we try it on this one, it won't. No data can be extracted. Okay. So if we know that it's going to be 1, we're going to add it. If it doesn't equal 1, we should be on. Okay, cool. Now let's run this one more time, see if we get our results. Because if that works, that means we figured out the hard part, which is the scrape. Then we just need to figure out how to nail down the specific search, create the whole big data set, and then go from there. Okay, so that's our first little foray here. So let's get started and run this finally. Done here. Let's see if that gave us the results we're looking for. Scrape output. And awesome, so much better. Gave us all the results we're looking for. We should see 175, 177, perfect. We know 176. We get it all. We have all the titles there. Some of them will be empty, and that is okay because it says like LinkedIn member or whatever the case may be. Awesome, cool. So that's the hard part. We got that part done. Now, the next step is going to be, okay, cool. So we know we have this, and now we have Director Austin. So now what we need to do is figure out a way to take this out of that URL and go to that every time. So what we need to do is we know the scrape works. We know we're here. We know the search results. We have everything we need, right? So how do we wildcard that? Well, what we can do is the first thing is we are going to need to loop through the city and state to search, and then for each city and state to search, grab the output. All right, so I can do that in a couple different ways. Some people would say use the Excel activities. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to store this into memory, and then we'll go from there. And we need to expand out the scrape outputs as well, so we can insert some stuff here. So I'm just going to give it a placeholder. We're going to call this and we're going to call this query city, query state. All right, query city, query state. We'll do this. Just getting the whole of it, and then I need to change some things inside of the code. So we know we don't need to write the headers anymore to this, because I already have the thing in there, so we're good there. This is still going to be the output that we're going to write to scrape output, but we're just going to rinse and repeat that over and over again. So here is what we need to actually do in the loop. So first thing we're going to do, this is actually our loop. So what I want to do is we're going to read some data into this, and I'm actually going to do this with a shorter data set to make sure this works. So let me do a duplicate here. I'm going to call create a copy, and we'll hide this when we're done. So I'm just going to do Bakersfield. So I'm just going to do these 3 specifically. All right. So let's do that. And then, right, let's go to, okay, so we have that. We know we go here. Right, I'm going to read this data into memory. I'm going to call this scrape output test, right? I know, yep. Okay, scrape output. I have to close it though. That's the problem when you use these activities. Scrape output. We're going to read from this sheet. I want the full range, right? You can add headers, that's fine, no big deal. And then what we need to do is for each, right, row in a data table. So for each row in, you have to create this variable real quick. We'll call it data table city and city to query. Right, we'll see that variable is available in the whole sequence. Awesome. For each row in data table city to query, what are we actually going to do? I'm going to call this something different as well. Instead of row, I'm going to call it for each, we'll use current row here to make it easier not to throw off anything inside of this, because we do have a loop inside of a loop. So we don't want to do that when we're writing. So current row, and then what we're going to do is, now we have this activity. This is going to go inside here, right? What we're going to replace this with here is, instead of Austin, we don't even need to variabilize it. We can actually do that. Plus current row item. What do we know? It's that first column header, 0 to string, right? Plus add that back in. So that'll give us the search we need. And then when we do this, right, we will have some variables that we need. So we're going to do a multiple assign. And we're going to do this at the beginning and the end of the loop. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to call this city. We'll call this string city to query. And that's going to be current row item 0 to string. And then this one's going to be state to query. Even though we're not querying it, we're just writing it back, and I'm just giving it a value just to do it. 1 to string. Okay, so we have those, right? And then at the end of this whole thing that we do, right, we are going to, let's add the int counter here, right? We're going to make this nothing. We're going to make this nothing. We're going to make this 0. Do I have to add strings? No, yeah. Cool. So that is the syntax to make a blank value, right? Because then what we're doing is we are assigning this, performing our loop, adding all the rows, and getting the result. So we know now in the build data table that we write to, instead of it being 4, we have to add an additional thing here. So what I'm going to do is change this to query city, query state, and then name URL, and then we'll add title and then location. So now instead of it being the 4, we change this to 6 columns, and then now we have the data table that we're going to write to. We read this, we're going to loop through it, multiple assign, grab this. We know we're going directly to that URL, right? Click on the results, encounter 1, extract data table. For each row in said data table, we're going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have to add 4 and 5 because there's 6 columns now, right? 4 and 5, right? To scrape output. And then once we are all done with that and add it to this, instead of it being inside of this, right, pull that activity out once we're done with the loop. Finish up our thing. There we go. Cool. So that is this in a nutshell. Let's run this with the 3. If we do this with the 3, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and run this for my buddy to get him all 75 pages, but I just want to show you the output with 3 because that's really the example in a nutshell. So let's see if this works for, it would be right here. So we are going to go to this URL there. So I'm actually going to close this down here. And then once we're done, it should just open up a new window. No? Let's see. So open, let's see, open window attached, this WebDriver mode. Let's just see what happens with this one and see if we just need to, after we're done with everything going through the next loop, maybe we just closed it down and then just rerun it. So let's just see what happens here. But that should be what we need to do. So let's debug. We'll minimize this once it starts running, and we'll go from there. So right here, okay, so it could not find the type into 176. So let's take a look at that. Okay. So we got to here, we know we did it. Let's see if we can, instead of using, let's edit target. It's probably not going to show up. Yep, so we got that, no big deal. So let's actually look inside of this, and instead of using fuzzy selector logic, let's indicate the target, click confirm, pull up the strict selector. We can see div tag. I don't like the div tag. I want to use something else. I want the visible inner text to be, I don't want that. I'm looking for where the visible inner text says this, right, that, and then I want to wildcard that specifically to be results, right? Indicate, highlight, and we know that that's there. We'll click on that. That's good. Change this to strict selector, no image. Click that every time. Wait for page load. Complete. We just want to make sure the page loads. And then let's just try another one. Director instead of Albuquerque. Let's just do Charlotte. Okay, 121. Is this still valid? It's not valid. Interesting. All right, let's try it again. So maybe I do need that div tag, which is fine. It's not a big deal. Oh wait, hold on. Can I go back? It's because the title is Albuquerque when I was running it. But I guess that shouldn't matter. Let's do this then. If we know that, we'll remove the title, we know it's in Chrome, we know it's going to be this page, and we know it's going to be a search on LinkedIn, so let's wildcard this. Div tag h2, still valid. Now let's open this up and see if this is any different, because then that way we can, so we're editing the actual like scope of it. This gets really wonky, but it's really good to know and see people do it. Okay. So do that, we get results. Search results contain, maybe we'll use that. So we see search, this, LinkedIn. Now let me go back, instead of Charlotte, let's what's another city? Birmingham, right? Cool, got it. Okay, cool. So we needed the div tag on the search on the results, but we edited that now to, instead of looking for that, we know we're using strict selector, visibility check, right? We can do that, wait for page load, complete. I'm just going to do fully visible as well, because we can see it, then we'll send it down, and then we're good to go. Okay, cool. Let's try that again. We'll close that down, and we'll run this and see what happens. Cannot find column 4. I know what I did there. Okay. So what it's actually doing is I need to fix that, because what's happening here is, and I haven't done this in a while. And I should have brushed up on my stuff before. This is a long video. Anyway, what I did here is in the extract data table, I need to actually keep the row items the same, right? Because there's no column, there actually isn't a column 4 like it said. We need to add our variables that we wrote before. Right, city to query and state to query, and then that's what I'll write to it. Right, so we're gonna get every time in the first one, if we look at the, if we look here, scrape output's gonna write, oh, with your search, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then it's gonna be Albuquerque, New Mexico for all the records that are there, and then Austin, Texas, and then Bakersfield, California. That's what makes sense. That's why it didn't work. Okay, got it. There we go. Cool. All right. Trying it again. Here we go. Close it down. Let's see, a moment of truth here, and if we do scrape output, we get remarkable city and state to search. Scrape outputs, we can see, oh, I should have said add headers to the data table, but that's fine, no big deal. We can always rewrite that back, but we can see right here all 200 something records with all of this, and we moved on. Awesome, cool. So that really is what we're looking for. Obviously, I'll make some edits to this and run the whole thing, but that was kind of working through the example of how would I build an automation to help me go scrape some values from some sort of system of record and get all different types of information. And I'm just looking right here. Let me just run a quick conditional formatting, make sure there's no duplicates here. Let's see, new rule, new values. If they duplicate, just make them just like highlight it. Right, we do that, and we see, okay, there are no highlights in this specific thing, which is awesome. Cool. Right, so that is really the automation in a nutshell. That's how you would perform a scrape with a very, very finicky system. I hope you enjoyed the conundrum. Sorry it was a little long there if you decided to go through that. If you decided to skip, you probably missed a bunch of heartache, which is there, but thanks for paying attention. Hope you learned something here. My buddy Mike's going to be pretty happy here. Goal is we're going to follow up with if this was helpful for his specific project. There are times where sometimes we build automations or little things like this, and it's not actually necessarily fruitful. But the work and the effort, sometimes it's a one-time deal, sometimes learning about how we can do this better, or even knowing we're going through the debugging process of building this out and then getting to a point where we say, all right, we knew how to think through this problem now. Can we do a little bit different? Maybe we need to change our search parameters. Maybe we need to grab a little bit more information. Maybe we want to do something more with this information. So that's really what I wanted to highlight here. So thank you for paying attention here. Once again, this is a summary of how you can use UiPath to perform a scrape and do a lot of really LinkedIn scraping and build some little bit of workarounds to deal with a finicky application, so to speak. I am KJ signing off, and I will see you with the next conundrum. All right, cheers, guys.